Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're watching a special edition of The Listening Post. We're focusing on Barack Obama, the news media, and 2009.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
We'll take a look back at the year of the most overexposed president in history.
I love you back.
And we'll delve through all of the media mudslinging to see how Obama fared in the media over the past 12 months.
Obama as a kid on the schoolyard that can be pushed around because he's too sweet.
When George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States in 1789, he was watched by a small crowd of people assembled to witness the ceremony. When Barack Obama took the oath as the 44th president on the 20th of January 2009, the entire world was watching. President Obama is the first new president of the 21st century. Some have even called him the first post-racial president. And his first year on the job took him to the heart of some of the world's biggest news stories: the collapsing American and global financial markets, his reaching out to the Islamic world, healthcare reform, throw in Afghanistan and that Nobel Peace Prize, and it's been a busy year. This week, The Listening Post is devoting our entire broadcast to the story of the new president and how the media from inside and outside the U.S. dealt with this constantly developing story. We start with the inauguration and the first 100 days. We've reported some of these numbers before, but they are worth repeating.
Well, Barack Obama has become the...
In the first 24 hours of Barack Obama's presidency on Inauguration Day, the global radio and television coverage combined added up to more than 20 million minutes.
An incredible atmosphere here.
At their peak, the world's electronic media were reporting the event 33 times per second. In the first 2 days of print coverage, newspapers around the world churned out more than 1 million articles on the new American president. It was a big story. In terms of media output, the biggest ever.
I think they were feeding a demand, and I think part of that is because the historic nature of the presidency, of the election of Barack Obama taking the oath of office, is so palpable and such a massive shift that everyone kind of wants to have a piece of it.
Kenyans from all over the country have come here to watch the swearing in of President Obama.
I think the news networks are all kind of responding to that demand.
Fox News, pro-Republican, anti-Obama, and the most watched U.S. 24-hour news channel also made some mischief when the Supreme Court justice administering the oath to the new president messed up the words.
I'm not sure that Barack Obama really is the President of the United States because the oath of office is set in the Constitution.
Fox News was operating in opposition for a change. But in the early days of the Obama presidency, the dominant tone of most media coverage was positive.
Of eloquence, of youth, of clear smartness.
One of the dynamics of the press that's so disheartening and frustrating is that they kind of tend to suck up to power and sort of embrace people when they're up and trash them when they're down. And that's sort of regardless of the actual substantive accomplishments or failures of the given politician.
Barack Obama promised change and was quick to make his mark. One of his first presidential signatures was used to order the closure of the prison at Guantanamo Bay.
Talking directly to the Muslim world.
Then, in his first official interview, Obama ignored the major American media outlets and went on the Saudi-owned, Dubai-based Arabic language channel Al Arabiya instead. In terms of dealing with the media, the new president was doing things his way.
The symbolism of the Arabiya interview by President Obama was a combination of the timing. It was right after the inauguration. It was the medium that he chose, a major pan-Arab satellite station in Arabic, and it was the message reaching out to the Islamic world.
My job is to communicate the fact that the United States has a stake in the well-being of the Muslim world.
All of these things together were really profoundly important, but in symbolic terms, because there had not yet been a change in policy. But I think rhetoric is the first step towards policy.
In March, the Obama roadshow went overseas. First, it was the G20 summit in London to discuss the global economic crisis, followed in the Czech Republic with a call for nuclear disarmament, and culminating with a landmark speech to the Muslim world delivered to the Turkish parliament in Ankara.
So let me say this as clearly as I can. The United States is not and will never be at war with Islam.
the global media could not help but conclude that change had come to the White House.
If you said to me, that first trip abroad, what was the most important part of it?
President Obama today reached out to the world's Muslims, speaking to the Turkish parliament.
I genuinely think that probably the most important part of it was the visit to Turkey.
President Obama coming to a secular country aspiring to join the European Union, but with a Muslim majority population, was seen as a very positive move in the Arab media and among the Arab and Muslim public to engage with the Muslim world. The Arab media, and in particular, for example, Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya, picked up the key message from Obama. The United States is not at war, nor will it be at war with Islam. And that was treated very favorably in the Arab media. It was repeated again and again, and it was contrasted with the messages of former President Bush.
بعيداً عن مواضيع الإرهاب والعلاقة التي كانت سائدة في عهد الرئيس جورج دبليو بوش.
But even before President Obama made that declaration to Muslims, he delivered a personal message to the Iranian people as they celebrated the arrival of their new year. He sent it via YouTube. New president, new medium, new message.
This holiday is both an ancient ritual and a moment of renewal.
It was the first time that a US president addressed Iranian leaders and called the Iranian government the Islamic Republic. President Obama congratulated Iranians in their own language.
We seek the promise of a new beginning. Thank you, and Eid-e-Shema Mubarak.
However, this president found that the grand gestures, well received abroad, landed him on the firing line at home with the right-wing media, who called one of his trips Obama's apology tour.
I think Barack Obama has come off as a kid on the schoolyard that can be pushed around.
Again, it was the pro-Republican Fox News channel that led the charge, not just on Obama's foreign policy, but also on his tax policy. In fact, Fox was central to the organization of the Tea Party protests, tax revolts that took place in many American cities in April.
Fox News took the somewhat remarkable step of not just covering these as events, but actually promoting them. They sent their anchors out across the country. All of them throughout the day were doing live shots from various locations. And it was clear they weren't covering the protests, they were part of the protest.
America is sick and tired of being sick and tired of lies and corruption and flushing our country down the toilet.
There is going to be an audience and people who simply do not like this president for a variety of reasons. And Fox is there to tap into those feelings and to stoke them.
The most radical left-wing administration in a generation.
Fox does stoke those feelings and rides them to ever higher ratings. The network remains the highest-rated news channel in America.
President Obama acted to change U.S. policy.
Even Barack Obama's America. We're back after the break with Obama versus the media, Part 2, a battle for the hearts and minds of Americans. Welcome back. For President Barack Obama, the biggest challenges and therefore the biggest stories of 2009 were, on the foreign policy side, Afghanistan, and domestically, healthcare. Obama's approach to healthcare reform, unveiled back in July, had the U.S. media in an instant and absolute tizzy. Buzzwords like death panels and government takeover led to an all-out media dogfight on the subject, and that was the catalyst that led Obama and his White House into a war with the media that is ongoing.
We begin with the latest attempt to convince Americans that health care reform is really just a big secret plot to kill old people.
Critics now claim the administration is actually pressuring certain disabled veterans to, quote, hurry up and die.
The media are very good at focusing on conflict.
The only death panels, Ms. Palin, are the figurative ones you have inspired with such irresponsible, dangerous, facile, vile hate speech.
What they're not so good at is explaining complex policy issues.
Is it possible health care could cost $3.5 trillion?
There is no middle ground. It's left against right.
Don't give the party of no, the party of shame, and the party of these nut job protesters any credibility at all.
The debate over health care was a media slugfest, with the news networks often checking their objectivity, their editorial balance, at the door.
And so what you get is a lot of coverage of the most extreme elements of the debate, which in this case has been people from this nascent anti-government movement who are bringing guns to rallies, who are holding up signs comparing Barack Obama to Adolf Hitler. No government health care! Who are screaming and yelling a lot.
Our impression of the debate at the moment is that the agenda is being set by a phalanx of skeptical media owners, in particular Rupert Murdoch. And again, the titles that Rupert Murdoch owns are very hostile. So, you know, from the Wall Street Journal to Fox News. One piece of advice to Obama would be, if you can persuade Rupert Murdoch that your reform is beneficial to Rupert Murdoch, then you might get it through.
The numbers are subject to debate, but more than 45 million Americans live without health care coverage. However, when proposals for reforming the healthcare system are debated in the U.S. media, that simple fact is among the many facts that seem to get lost.
Trying to ram this thing through without the public knowing what's in this 1,000-page monstrosity of a bill.
If you actually ask people, you go down point by point and ask them, would you favor this idea? The public is actually strongly in favor of almost everything that the administration wants to do in this healthcare overhaul. But then if you ask them, do you favor the Obama healthcare plan without explaining it, it turns out the public is split right down the middle, and that ultimately can't be explained by almost anything else than a failure of the press.
In the middle of the media debate over healthcare, there was a story that almost no one saw coming. The announcement from Oslo that President Obama had won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Shock and awe at the Nobel Peace Prize.
President Barack Obama.
When Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize, most commentators around the world lost it.
When the reporters were covering this, they gasped in shock.
It's a ridiculous decision, I should say.
The journalists did not get it.
Does this prize come too early?
Like giving someone an Oscar in the hope that it would encourage them to make a decent motion picture.
They did not get what the average people in Russia, in Thailand understand, that Obama is the most powerful man speaking peace this time.
President Obama seemed to be as surprised by the announcement as the media were. He said he was deeply humbled and viewed the decision less as a recognition of his accomplishments and more as a call to action. One familiar and telling refrain on the U.S. airwaves was that President Obama did not win the Nobel Prize for what he did, even for who he was. Rather, he won it for who he wasn't.
In some ways, he wins this award for not being George W. Bush.
Well, I think what this is a reflection of the general dislike for George Bush.
The conservative Fox News channel and Barack Obama were ideological opponents long before he got to the White House. However, this attack on the president following the announcement of Obama's Nobel Peace Prize might have been the last straw. By October, Obama's White House took the gloves off. It essentially declared war on Fox News. The foot soldiers, White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs,
the White House looking to correct misinformation,
and Communications Director Anita Dunn.
That Fox News often operates almost as either the research arm or the communications arm of the Republican Party.
Firing back from their on-air foxholes, commentators Sean Hannity.
They don't believe in a free press.
Bill O'Reilly.
Has the Obama administration declared war on Fox News?
And Glenn Beck.
The supposed watchdogs of our republic being brutally and viciously assaulted.
Fox has been very clear about its role during the Obama administration. It has said that it is the voice of opposition, that it will be the voice of opposition to the administration. And during this year, it has played that role consistently.
And welcome to Hannity, home of all the news that is not White House approved.
USA! There's little difference between those shows that Fox considers news programs and opinion. Fox's purported news programs themselves advance many of the same smears and falsehoods that Glenn Beck may originate.
This guy is, I believe, a racist.
So what you often see happening is a controversy that erupts because Glenn Beck has said something. And then the Fox News side will then say, well, a controversy has now erupted. Some are now saying that Obama may not be a legal president. And of course, this story started with the Fox News opinion side.
Attacking his attackers at Fox News was now clearly part of President Obama's media strategy, and it was noteworthy that the first place that the White House delivered that message was on CNN.
But let's not pretend they're a news network the way CNN is.
Essentially, they see Fox as sort of a lost cause. So I think the broader message was to the rest of the media, which was, it was really designed to stop the rest of the media following up on Fox stories.
Press control.
But that will not stop Fox from doing what it does.
That Barack Obama had Marxist tendencies.
Especially since, as the network's owner Rupert Murdoch happily pointed out, ratings are up.
The Fox News motto is fair and balanced coverage of hard news, and we do that.
Fox News' war with the Obama White House is good for business, and for Rupert Murdoch, that's almost always the bottom line. And then there's Afghanistan. President Obama had some hard decisions to make on troop levels there, and he had to make them while waging a media war on his home turf. Obama stalled on the Afghanistan decision for months, and when the time approached to announce his policy, suddenly his administration sprung a leak.
Last night, the Washington Post published to its website something that had been talked about for a long time in D.C., but so far had been kept secret.
Washington is a town where these kind of cloak and dagger games go on all the time.
In September, the Washington Post reported on a leaked document, an intelligence assessment by General Stanley McChrystal, the U.S. and NATO commander in Afghanistan, who called for 40,000 more troops and warned if that does not happen,
the war could be lost.
And lost quickly. The story became the talk of the American airwaves.
After a confidential assessment was leaked.
It seems clear to me that whoever leaked the McChrystal assessment was trying to create support for a troop escalation. It definitely catalyzed the debate once that got out there, and since that memo got into the press, we've had this, this war going on in the media.
Then the Obama administration, or someone close to it, leaked back. The Washington Post, New York Times, and Los Angeles Times all published virtually the same story. They all identified their sources as senior U.S. officials. The article said that Carl Eikenberry, the U.S. ambassador in Kabul, told Washington there was no point in sending any more troops unless the U.S. found a more credible and less corrupt partner in Afghanistan than President Hamid Karzai's government.
The obvious conclusion, and it's just a conclusion because you don't know for sure, is that somebody close to the White House thought that Obama was being pushed into a corner on ordering more troops and wanted to leak this so people would see that there is a wider policy debate going on. I actually think it was very useful.
The day after the three papers printed the Eikenberry story, Pentagon head Robert Gates was quoted as saying he was appalled by the amount of leaking that has been going on and that everybody out there ought to just shut up. When he eventually unveiled his Afghanistan strategy on December 1st at the West Point Military Academy,
I do not make this decision lightly.
President Obama's commitment of 30,000 more troops and a slow strategic pullout in 18 months inevitably had its critics in the media.
We have been waiting for months for tonight's announcement, 3 months to be exact. That's 3 months of dithering, 3 months of waiting for the leader of the free world to tell us how he plans to defend our country in a fight that he once called the good war.
The president said tonight that the American departure...
However, elsewhere, among less conservative voices in the U.S. media, it was Obama's exit strategy that was called into question.
Secretary Gates, is this a deadline?
It's the beginning of a process. In July 2011, our generals are confident that they will know whether our strategy is working.
I think that's a wrong impression to give our friends. It's the wrong impression to give our enemies. It's the wrong impression to give the men and women who want to go over there and win.
One of the final major Obama stories the media had to report on in 2009 came in December, and it had an ironic element to it.
The gold medal.
It happened on December 10th, when the same president who had just announced an escalation in the war in Afghanistan traveled to Norway to accept his Nobel Peace Prize.
But perhaps the most profound issue surrounding my receipt of this prize is the fact that I am the commander-in-chief of a military, of a nation, in the midst of two wars.
President Obama also addressed the opinion of some that a wartime commander-in-chief is not qualified to win a peace prize. But in order to appease that crowd, the Anointed One had the teleprompter cue up to one of his all-time favorite lines.
That is why I prohibited torture. That is why I ordered the prison at Guantanamo Bay closed. And that is why I have reaffirmed America's commitment to abide by the Geneva Conventions.
There are certainly those in Europe this morning who I think are skeptical about the speech that he gave. But again, this was a president who said that America has a unique place and unique purpose in the world. And that is to be a force for good, a force for pursuing peace, but also a force for standing up to threats that cannot be ignored. And implicit in that was that perhaps some in the room or throughout the continent might be more likely to take those threats less seriously. So again, I think it was a pretty tough message.
So how do we sum up Barack Obama and the media in 2009? And what will 2010 hold in store for the American president? Here at The Listening Post, we only report on the news, so we'll let the people in the know do the talking.
He's got a lot of stuff that is still on his plate, and he has also this political weight on his shoulders looking toward the next election, which probably is not going to be much fun for the Democrats or for the White House.
This is a guy who still has a lot of popularity, and I think he understands that the media for him is absolutely crucial. If he were to start pulling back, I think it would be a big blow to him. He needs public sentiment to be constantly there for him as a kind of cushion.
What I hope happens in 2010 is that the expectations start to become a little bit more realistic, so that maybe we can assess Obama truly on what he is doing and accomplishing, as opposed to measuring that with all of the incredibly high expectations, the expectations that were way too high and unreasonable in the first place.
That's our special edition broadcast on the media whirlwind that surrounded Barack Obama last year. President Obama was not only all over the news, he was also all over the internet. So we've chosen our favorite Obama internet clip of 2009 to be our first web video of the week in 2010. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post.
He's Barack Obama, he's come to save the day. He passed a major stimulus for the bourgeois, then said he'd have the deficit. Ha